Join us for an hour of meditation and affirmative prayer. Welcome to Touching the Stillness with Reverend Paulette Pipe.
When we touch the stillness.
Hello and welcome to Touching the Stillness, the podcast for meditation, mindfulness and spiritual practice. What a delight it is to be back with our spiritual Touching the Stillness community once more. I'm your host, Paulette Pipe, and I'm welcoming you here to be part of our thought for the day, to experience our meditation, and then to join us in sharing affirmations of truth to support us through whatever experience we're going through. And also in this episode, we've added a prayer specifically for the situation with the coronavirus. So stay with us, and if you're new and this is your first time being here, we invite you to open your heart and mind. Let your own soul be ajar this day as we journey through this time together. We begin each broadcast just taking a moment to center ourselves, to turn away from distractions and really be deliberate in our intention to come together. So we begin by silencing or turning off any gadgets that might be a distraction and turn our attention within. Usually we like to focus on our heart center, or maybe if our eyes are closed, at the third eye, as though we're peering through our forehead. And just take a few deep breaths, allowing whatever has gone before this moment to just recede into the background, to let our own soul gradually open to whatever message will support us this day, whatever prayer we can align with this day, whatever lyric in the song will uplift us and remind us of the truth. Just take another couple of deep breaths. And now as we bring our attention back to the broadcast, we do so with gratitude for our community, for the teams working behind the scenes, for the blessings seen, unseen, expected and unexpected. And we are grateful for this configuration of hearts and souls united across the airways, to unite in community in touching the stillness. And so it is. Amen.
Yes, I am worthy of love, like stars are above.
So that was the song I Am Worthy of Love by Bukeka from the CD of the same name, Bukeka. Have you ever felt invisible in a crowd, or perhaps forgotten, excluded, isolated, or have a longing of your heart to belong? And though there's a lot of findings that exist, we don't necessarily need research statistics to confirm what we innately know. We all have a psychological need to feel that we belong, that we matter, that our lives have meaning and purpose, that we're seen and valued. Why then do so many of us feel isolated and left out? This is what we're exploring today, and I'd like you to just listen to this clip from a TED Talk by the journalist Johann Hari, who suffered depression early in life that led him on a quest to travel the world speaking to experts in the field about depression and loneliness.
We are the loneliest society in human history. There was a recent study that asked Americans, do you feel like you're no longer close to anyone? And 39% of people said that described them, no longer close to anyone. In the international measurements of loneliness, Britain and the rest of Europe are just behind the US, in case anyone here is feeling smug. And I spent a lot of time discussing this with the leading expert in the world on loneliness, an incredible man named Professor John Cacioppo, who was at Chicago, and I thought a lot about one question his work poses to us. So Professor Cacioppo asked, why do we exist? Why are we here? Why are we alive? One key reason is that our ancestors on the savannas of Africa were really good at one thing. They weren't bigger than the animals they took down a lot of the time. They weren't faster than the animals they took down a lot of the time, but they were much better at banding together into groups and cooperating. This was our superpower as a species. We band together. Just like bees evolved to live in a hive, humans evolved to live in a tribe. And we are the first humans ever to disband our tribes. And it is making us feel awful.
So the need for connection in communities and tribes is part of our genetic DNA, not merely to survive, but to thrive. In the cycle of life, there may be times when we experience a brief but acute sense of loneliness, and this can happen after moving to a new location, losing or even starting a new job, falling out with a lover or a friend. And then in other instances, feelings of loneliness may be more chronic and long-lasting, say after a difficult divorce, departure from a long-time spiritual community or other supportive community, grieving the death of a loved one. And that seems to happen especially after the funeral, when it feels as though everyone's disappeared all at the same time and you're left to face your heartbreak alone. We flourish when exposed to positive human connection or are part of a positive, inclusive community. And to put this in a bit of a spiritual context, Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones put it like this: it is in, through, and by means of our relationships that God deepens its experience of itself. There is something within each of us that knows this is true, and this is why we long for a deeper connection with other living beings. I can certainly relate with loneliness or isolation, and I'm not saying that to get sympathy or to be rescued. I'm on a journey just like the rest of us in my humanity, having experiences, ups and downs, and what I rely on is spiritual practice, meditation and mindfulness to support me on that journey. In a culture rife with selfies and clickbait images and memes, we may be tempted to only put our best face forward, hiding how we really feel. And this only compounds the pangs of loneliness and dejection that overtakes us in response to changes in our society, particularly in the West, that leaves so many of us feeling alone. For me, the loneliness most acutely happens around the time of my birthday or during national holidays, especially since I've been living in the States. Since I was a little girl, I've always loved birthdays, my own as well as celebrating that of my friends and loved ones. And so for as long as I've been working or employed, it's been a standing practice to not work on my birthday. Over the last couple of decades, though, with greater regularity than I can bear, I find myself spending more and more birthdays alone. And I think part of it's because there's this huge misconception that because I travel a lot, I'm probably away or out whooping it up with friends, or it's assumed I just want to be alone to meditate. And therein lies another big misconception. It's presumed that I live the life of some kind of meditating monastic, with a sort of do not disturb sign stamped on my forehead. But I do more than just meditate. Okay, yes, I do endeavor and make a big point about making sure that all aspects of life are mindful, but that includes having fun too. And if you knew me, you would know I'm exuberant, playful, game for a laugh, and up for a bit of a rave just like the next person. So invariably, more times than I care to mention, I find myself left to my own devices, spending far too many birthdays and holidays alone. I know what you're thinking. Why don't you invite yourself somewhere? Why don't you let other people know that you're around and you want to do something? I told you this has been going on for a long time. So yes, I've tried that. I've even inveigled myself into other people's holiday plans. Sometimes that works out, but not always. And when it doesn't, I put on a brave face and perpetuate the self-sufficient reputation I inadvertently earned by doing my best to fill the void with activities that I can do solo. Don't get me wrong, loneliness is not necessarily a friendless state, and that's part of the confusion. I know a lot of people, and I have many friends, although my closest ones and my BFFs are all abroad. It doesn't mean that when it's birthdays and holidays that there's always friends and communities around that I can be part of. As national holidays or my birthday approaches, if I don't have plans in place, I get depressed and then embarrassed, feeling like the one on the sports or quiz team that no one wants to pick to be in their group. And I imagine everyone in the world except me is off enjoying family or community time together. Last year, for example, I didn't have the funds to get away for my birthday, so I booked months in advance a much-needed therapeutic massage as a way to distract myself from feeling abandoned and isolated by my tribe. At least then I'd have something to look forward to. So on the day, I had scheduled a mid-morning treatment, and then when it was complete, I bundled up and braved the weather and headed to my favorite local Thai restaurant for lunch. I was doing so well at first. I was reading all the birthday wishes that had been posted on Facebook and the text messages coming in from family and friends around the world. And halfway through my meal, the reality set in. Why was I sitting here eating lunch alone on my birthday and then facing the prospect of spending a long and lonely evening by myself? I couldn't believe it was happening again. I promised myself, as I do each time it happens, that I wouldn't let another birthday go by alone. I'd find somewhere to be, somewhere to go that I could be part of a tribe to hang out with on my special day. Which is why 2 weeks ago I was caught off guard when on the day before my birthday I was getting ready to start my morning devotion and this wave of sadness overtook me. Oh no, not again. I'm going to be spending yet another birthday by myself. A friend had arranged for us to go to dinner that night, the eve of my birthday, but I had no plans in place for the actual day. And that was because with my trip to India so recently behind me and then the pressing deadline of a weekly podcast schedule, I hadn't planned ahead to take off somewhere or engage in something fun that wouldn't leave me feeling abandoned. So I scurried around looking for something to do in the area, and I couldn't find anything that was appealing, and then for some inexplicable reason decided to search for a place to go for a float. I had no idea, no clue why that particular idea came to mind as an option. I did enjoy my first float pool experience in a spa in the UK last summer, but I don't know why that came to mind now. But I went looking and I found something, and miraculously, although it was such short notice, I managed to find a location a couple of towns over that had a float tank in its spa, and they still had openings for treatments the next day. So I booked an appointment online, timing it in such a way that I'd be gone most of the day. And it also occurred to me that because I had my head down working, it had actually been several days since I'd seen or had connection with another person. Well, now I'd not only be doing something to commemorate the occasion that would take me out of the house for the day, as an added and very important bonus, I'd also be able to experience therapeutic touch that is so crucial for our well-being. It's not just connection that human species need to thrive. We also need touch, and that is an aspect of loneliness that often gets overlooked. Dr. Helena Backlund-Wassling, a researcher in the Department of Psychology at the Institute of Neuroscience and Physiology in Sweden, has contributed to a number of studies in this area, and her work mostly relates to children and adolescents. But she deems loneliness to be one of the greatest life hazards of our times, and credits touch as a beneficial key element for connecting with people and in forming relationships. In fact, together with her team of researchers, she mapped out how soft touch activates the part of the brain associated with emotions. Daka Keltner, a professor of psychology and the director at Berkeley Social Interaction Laboratory, who also happened to be one of the participants actually who attended the Gandhi retreat with me, also highlights physiological and social functions of touch. Touch activates the frontal cortex of the brain relating to reward and compassion. It builds up cooperative relationships, signals safety. Soothing, warm touch leads to oxytocin release, which is the feel-good hormone, and calms cardiovascular stress. When we were on retreat, Daka gave a presentation on power, and one of the points he shared that really struck some kind of primal chord in me is that solitary confinement in the prison system is actually an act of torture. And I had never thought about it before, and I really get it. You know, the sensory deprivation for 23 hours a day, lack of contact, lack of touch, lack of connection with others, that can literally drive you crazy. Most of the time, I'm at peace being in my own company. I'm an introvert who recoups my energy by being alone, although I suspect that during the past 10 years since I've been self-employed, the reverse may possibly be true now. Anyway, back to my birthday spa outing last month. What was potentially going to be a disaster only 24 hours before, at least emotionally, turned out to be a really lovely day. I had a really lovely birthday. My treatments, they met all my expectations. I connected with a wonderful team of people, the staff and team working at the spa. And it didn't hurt that Shanda, the spa owner, brought in cupcakes to share in honor of my birthday. And that was so sweet of her. By the time my treatments were complete, I headed to the float tank room where I was going to have my first float tank experience, which is the sensory deprivation tank, different from the float pool that I had been in England back in the summer last year. So I go to the float tank room and I'm really relaxed. I feel nurtured, pampered, expansive, and my heart is soothed of its sadness. After all the protocols for using the tank have been explained to me, I shower and step into the large egg-shaped tank that's salinated with 1,000 pounds of Epsom salts diluted into 10 inches of water, and that's what creates the buoyancy and the zero gravity that you experience in the tank. So I eased in, closed the hydraulic lid, and was immediately entombed in the pod with glowing meditative lights changing colors. And then I tentatively lay down on my back, listening to meditative music that was piping softly into the pod-like tank, because I couldn't really hear it very well with the earplugs that I had to have in my ears to seal out the salt water. On one side of the pod was a big red button that would turn off the lights, and there was a spray bottle of water with a washcloth in the event that salt accidentally gets into the eyes. And then there's another big green button on the other side that turns off the music. Shanda recommended I have the float therapy after my treatments, as it would take me to such a deep meditative zone I wouldn't want to be moving around the spa to prepare for other treatments. And so with that expectation of being in a meditative zone, I tried to let my body relax, and instead I noticed for some reason that my shoulders were really tense. No, this can't happen. I just had a massage. I can't have tense shoulders and undo all that good work. Of course, this response just made me tighten up even more, didn't it? I wasn't really sure why I was tense. I wasn't scared or anything. I wasn't really uncomfortable. Somehow I had missed the small print that said, initially, pain or tension in the body may seem more noticeable. Yeah, it certainly was noticeable. Silently at first and then out loud, I began repeating affirmations like mantras. My body was a little more relaxed, but not quite there yet. And it did at first begin to float aimlessly but gently from side to side in the saline water. So then I went to the breath, and I deepened my breathing with long and slow inhalations, willing my shoulders to let go, and then exhaling extended long breaths, trying to do anything to abate the tension in my shoulders. And then I decided to turn out the lights. Immediately, the experience changed. The affirmations and deep breathing started working more effectively in the pitch black chamber. Now all I could sense was the music wafting in and out, as though I were underwater listening to sounds drifting from the water's surface. I also heard the whooshing sound of my breath. At least that's how it sounded in the tank. And the gentle thump, thump, thump of my heartbeat pulsing in my plugged ears. Gradually, the music was no longer audible. It simply disappeared from my awareness. Then the sound of my breath melted away, followed by the sound of my heartbeat, which also dissolved into absolute silence. I kid you not, I was literally touching the stillness, suspended in the black as night darkness of this saltwater tomb, with all sensory feelings erased, any sense of loneliness I may have brought with me soaked away into the briny liquid. This was a different kind of abandonment. This was letting go rather than feeling let go of. This was not rejection or disconnection. This was embracing what is, breath by breath, until I was completely gone.
Now is time. Now Now is time with you. Oh, oh,
Like the lyrics of that song you just heard by Trina Brunk. Now is time, all loneliness gone. Now is time with you. Now is time, now all hard edges gone. Now is time with you. That so aptly sums up the experience that happened in this meditation, where I just felt like I'd had an out-of-body experience. I could feel nothing, sense nothing, hear nothing, true sense deprivation, and a deep, deep, deep state of meditation. I didn't plan it. I'd prayed the day before not to have to be alone on my birthday, and this is how the answer to my prayer manifested itself, with my body freshly pummeled and softly kneaded, lying in a float tank, submerged in stillness and silence, with all the loneliness and the hard edges gone. The poet Kyle Gibran wrote, "Life is an island in an ocean of loneliness." With my own heart and soul ajar, I completely surrendered everything. The thoughts, the beliefs, the pain associated with my idea of being forgotten. And in that moment, my life became an island in an ocean of loneliness, a safe haven, a soul sanctuary, experiencing a resonance of deep knowing and deep satisfaction that everything necessary for the soul fulfillment is always provided. Actually, I even got more out of it the next day, which is when I had my pre-scheduled monthly silent Sabbath. It dawned on me that I'd stepped out of the float tank into a new reality after having experienced one of the deepest meditations I've ever engaged in. So there was a blessing in my finding myself alone and lonely. And when I went to a place of prayer, and when I went to a place of putting feet on my prayer by then looking for something to do, I came up with this beautiful experience that I had never anticipated, that was not on my radar, and it was healing. So I feel like I'm being really vulnerable here by sharing with you that I feel lonely at times, because we don't always want to admit that we feel lonely, especially when we're on a spiritual path. For some of us, it feels like to say it out loud feels like we failed, or it's some kind of weakness if we have to admit that we're plagued by a sense of invisibility. But if, like me, you find yourself thrashing or sinking in an ocean of loneliness, be it for a day or it's just an ongoing chronic experience of feeling invisible, forgotten, isolated, don't judge yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be encouraged, dear listener. As Johann Hari, who we heard earlier in the clip, as he assures us, if we are anxious and depressed, which are side effects or causes of loneliness, we are not weak, we are not crazy, we're not, in the main, machines with broken parts. We are human beings with unmet needs. I've noticed that if I move past any sense of embarrassment and I'm no longer shielding my vulnerability, then talking with a trusted friend, therapist, or spiritual leader helps me to gain a new perspective. Maybe that will work for you too. And if it really feels too awkward to talk about it, I journal about everything I'm feeling. And this too provides renewed perspective that comes from having coughed up a fur ball, either verbally or in writing. And it helps to bring me back to center without having to negate or numb my feelings. In fact, even in this last bout of pre-birthday blues, I got insight into a behavior pattern that floated to the surface of my mind, my consciousness, for awareness, and then I was able to do the work to heal it. I don't advise stuffing our feelings. Me, I sputter and I cry and I have a choked up conversation with God, and if I can muster the motivation, I'll head for a walk in nature. But that doesn't always happen when you're feeling down. And then other times, I'll go and volunteer in a place that brings me into contact with other people, so I'm not just thinking about myself. Or I take to my yoga mat and do some gentle poses that connect me with my body. Another useful practice is to take time for self-care and engage in things like skin brushing or gently massage your body with oil so that there's at least some soft touch. And then on rare occasions, I may put on some gospel music and just dance out my pain. The music warms up my hurting heart and shift happens. Not always and not right away. But this and the other examples I just shared, when coupled with the stabilizing foundation of my meditation and spiritual practice, always provides me with a secure place to land. Because the intention is not to turn a blind eye to our emotions, but maintaining our practice will heighten our intuition. And then this will lead us to discern solutions that help to assuage the pain of loneliness. Like me, following the prompt to go and float. I don't even know where that idea came from, as I said, but then I had this incredible healing experience on my birthday. And in addition to the float tank sensory experience described, another blessing came from the pain of feeling forgotten. So one of my prayers that I affirm is that if this keeps happening, if this keeps occurring, where I end up alone and feeling invisible on these special days, then at least let me find meaning in it. Let me find a way to use it for good. And I do believe I received the answer to that prayer last week while talking to a friend. And I'm inviting you to hold it with me and then become part of it when the idea fully forms and unfolds. So this is the idea. I intend to start an online meditation meetup where on the alternate weeks to the podcast, which happens bi-monthly, on those alternate weeks, we can come together as a community to meditate for maybe 20 minutes or so on a platform that allows us to also see one another. It will be our version of what's called social prescribing. And I didn't even know there was a name for what I was being called into, that I was calling forth, until I heard Johann Hari describe something similar in his TED Talk. See, great minds and all that? 19th century American poet Emily Dickinson says, "The soul should always stand ajar, ready to welcome the ecstatic experience." That's what I'm inviting us into, that with a collective soul ajar, well, more than slightly ajar, open really, we come to the ecstatic experience of silence and open ourselves to love, connection, coherence, all in the comfort of our own environment. We'll create our own island refuge in an ocean of loneliness, not to come together to lament the conditions, but to transcend them while being present to each other in sacred community. Many of you probably already have that in your church, synagogue, mosque, AA group, yoga class, or evening class. If not, my hope is that our still-to-be-named online meditation community will meet some of those needs as we gather in our unity of purpose. Again, Johann Hari shared, "You know how when you're down or depressed you might hear, 'just be yourself'? He says, I had this thought, don't be you, don't be yourself, be us, Be we. Be part of a group. And that's what I'm advocating. If you're looking for an anchor in a community where like-minded souls connect, set the intention to come and embrace the stillness with us. Join me in creating this meaningful, sacred community where we all matter, where we all feel as though we belong to each other. Namaste. And now we're heading into our meditation. And the music you'll hear underscoring our meditation today is Attuning to Oneness. And that's the title track from the CD by Paradiso and Rasamai. Heart to heart. We come together at this moment with sacred intention to feel the presence of the divine, and to also feel our connection with one another. Begin to deepen your breath deliberately so that we can fully relax into this moment. As you breathe, add any micro adjustments you need to make to relax even more, while being able to deepen the breath and extend each exhalation. Allow your face to soften and your jaw to unclench. Soften your eyebrows and release that pinch of the brow right between the eyebrows. Bring your attention to the pelvic floor, that region that extends from the pubic bone all the way back to your sit bones, the area of your root chakra, where, mostly unaware, we hold a lot of our emotions and tension. Breathe into that area now, inviting it to release all tightness, all tension. Where else do you hold tension? In your chest, in your lungs, unexpressed grief, in your solar plexus, where you have a gut reaction to what's going on. You explore and notice where you're clenching, and just exhale your next out-breath to that place with a gentle invitation to let go. Imagine yourself submerged in this time of stillness, buoyant, much like a float tank that is filled with salt to create buoyancy and zero gravity. Let the stillness be that for you now. Allow any overwhelming sense of loneliness, abandonment, rejection that may be in any area of your body like salt rocks. Let them go now. Imagine those rocks of emotion melding into the warm sensation of stillness. Let go the invisible blocks or energy, the unconscious thought patterns that unintentionally disconnect us from our tribe. Let those go and become merged into the stillness, much like salt rocks merging into warm water. And just breathe and be with whatever is in this moment. Embrace and float in the stillness. Let it carry you, support you, heal you. You are safe. Affirm your safety. Affirm, I matter. I belong. I see myself with loving clarity, and I am visible to others too. I am surrounded by people I love and who love me. Relax some more, and as you do, imagine you are radiating welcoming love light. You choose the color of that light and radiate it out now. Love light that welcomes, that dismantles beliefs and ideas that no longer serve. Love light that erases any feelings or sensations that create blocks or barriers. Let this light expand your soul so it's not just ajar, but now wide open to receive the love, the connection, the heart touch that we need to thrive. And with our souls wide open, we welcome the healing properties of stillness surrounding us and enfolding us in this very moment. Allow these words you hear spoken, our prayer treatment for the month of March, to be the words and intention of your open heart. Taking a deep, conscious breath, I allow my attention to drop into the abode of love that is my heart space. Here, I align with a new and activating thought that connects me deeply to the spirit of divine love within. Sensing my intimate and intricate union with universal love allows to subside any sense of abandonment, isolation, or yearning to belong. Emotions associated with forlorn feelings of loneliness or of being ignored are first acknowledged and then beautifully and easily transmuted into their spiritual equivalent. I am creating space in my thoughts and thus in my life where support, connection, and a tangible sense of belonging is evident. United with divine love, I experience the grace that brings with it a more compelling understanding of my oneness with all people. The palpable presence and essence of God is as close as my own heartbeat, reassuring me that I am never friendless or alone. Immersed in and radiating love-inclusive thoughts spiritualizes my thinking and transforms my life. Tenderly, with sacred synchronicity and loving kindness, I am magnetically drawn into contact with those who can see me, love me, and value me just as I am. I am visible. I matter. I belong. And so it is. Amen. Take another deep breath. Let go some more. And silently affirm, I am deeply grateful for the realization that I am visible and that who I am matters. And now we begin our journey in consciousness back to this time and place, aware again of the sensations in our body, the transformative power of prayer, the healing properties of stillness, the truth taking root in our being, and the breath. And we move into the rest of our prayer segment from this place of radiance and relaxation.
Now is time. Now is all loneliness gone.
In each episode, I've been sharing a reflection from the Association for Global New Thought as part of the Season for Nonviolence that we are in the midst of. And the thought for today that I've selected from this week's reflections is compassion. It begins, Mother Teresa implored us to find someone who thinks he is alone and let him know that he is not. And then the Dalai Lama, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. And then another quote from Albert Einstein. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. The reflection continues. Compassion is about relieving suffering and about celebration, which also relieves suffering by putting it in a context of gratitude. With compassion comes a greatness of heart. Compassion arises when we allow our heart to be touched by the pain and needs of others. The call to action. Today I will engage compassion to lead my actions, my words, and my life. And I shared our prayer treatment for March during our meditation, and also the power statement, I am deeply grateful for the realization that I am visible and that who I am matters. So in lieu of the prayer treatment in our prayer segment, I'd like to share 2 readings from Unity's Lenten booklet called Fasting and Feasting, and these reflections are by Reverend Jean Marie Eck that deal with the idea of fasting from loneliness and feasting on connection. I fast from loneliness. While my heart may long for connection, I recognize there are times when I choose to isolate myself. I may believe there is no one who can understand my pain and struggle. Years of continuous hurt may have turned into resentment and mistrust. I might even be hiding from my true spiritual self as I identify solely with my limited egoic self. Sometimes I want to hide my suffering in the hope that people will see an image of outer perfection. As I notice my thoughts of loneliness, I know they are not truth. I choose to release any idea of disconnection from anyone in my life, including myself. I fast from ruminating over reasons why I might feel excluded from the love of others. I let go of the need to control my relationships, and I willingly forgive all hurts that have led me to embrace the false belief in aloneness. I give no power to ideas that keep me separate from others. I am free from old beliefs that have limited my ability to recognize our shared humanity and commonality. I feast on connection. As I love and approve of myself, I am able to see that I have unlimited possibilities for connection in my life. I reach out to others with a generosity of spirit, experiencing greater harmony, peace, and understanding in all my relationships. Rather than waiting for an invitation, I take the initiative to call a friend I have been missing and make plans to enjoy a meal together. I may venture out to a new class or community event where I can relate to others who enjoy my shared interests. I may seek the counsel of a trusted therapist to hear my history and support me in grieving my losses and releasing repressed emotions. As I feast on my connection with others, I remember that we are all one and each person is an expression of God. In spiritual community together, we prayerfully commune with the love of God, and I can feel my connection with all life. I thrive in a loving universe that provides for my every need, including my need for unity with others. As I walk in a consciousness of oneness, I feast on connection, and I am at peace with all. And our prosperity decree for March, which is an affirmative statement you're invited to share before you pay it forward or share a donation or tithe where you have been spiritually fed or witnessed spiritual principle in action. The affirmative prosperity decree for March is as follows. I allow the energy of money to freely stream into and out of my life in a positive, replenishing flow of plenty. And so it is. Amen. And then, as I mentioned at the top of the program, Unity Worldwide Ministries has put out a prayer regarding the coronavirus. So we invite you to join in the following prayer if you'd like to adapt this or use one of your own choosing. I affirm, I know that God is a love that has no end and a power that knows no bounds. God's healing power of divine love is restoring, healing, and revitalizing our world in this very moment. I let go of any fears or anxieties, and I affirm that all are safe, healthy, and protected. I bless all those who support us in maintaining vibrant, radiant health. I express divine life in all that I think, say, and do. I bless our global family with radiant health, peace of mind, and abundant love. And so it is. Amen. So that's the end of our prayer segment, and you can locate the prayers and the prosperity decree at the bottom of the affirmative prayers page on our website at touchingthestillness.org. So that's it. We've come to the end of the broadcast. We know we've given you a lot to think about, to pray on, to reflect about, and to practice. And know that you are never alone, as the Spirit of love goes before us and makes our way safe, protected, connected, prayerful, visible, valued, and romantic. Stay blessed, stay present, and we'll be back together again soon. Goodbye.
God is here, the light of God surrounds us. God is here, the love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. There is peace. There is quiet. When we touch the stillness.